friends, welcome to Woman Wednesday. I am super excited to share with you about our woman this week from the Bible. Her name is Dorcas, or sometimes she is called Tabitha. So we're going to read today from Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 43. It's a really small part in the book of Acts. So before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about the book of Acts. The book of Acts is actually chapter 2. It's the sequel to the Gospel of Luke. So the same author who wrote the Gospel of Luke wrote the book of Acts, and they're meant to be a sequel. They're meant to go together. Luke is part 1, Acts is part 2. Okay? So in Luke, we hear the good news of Jesus Christ. We hear all about Jesus Christ's life. It's the gospel that tells us about Jesus's life. So we hear about his life, his ministry, his death, and his resurrection in Luke. Acts, which is the second part, we hear about Jesus's ascension. So after his resurrection, when he ascends into the heavens, we hear about his ascension. We hear about the Holy Spirit coming down at what we call Pentecost. So the Holy Spirit coming and blessing the disciples. And then we hear all about the beginning of the church, of the early church. We hear about how the church was founded, how the church was spread, what the early church looked like, what ministry was, what the community was like. So the Gospel of Luke, part 1, is all about Jesus's life. Acts, part 2, is all about the early church. So in this little section in Acts chapter 9, we're going to hear about Peter, also known as Simon Peter, who is one of Jesus's disciples. And we're going to hear about the ministry he engaged in with a woman named Dorcas. You'll also hear her referred to as Tabitha in this text. So let's hear from Acts chapter 9. Now in Joppa, there was a disciple whose name was Tabitha, which in Greek is Dorcas. She was devoted to good works and acts of charity. At that time, she became ill and died. When they had washed her, they laid her in a room upstairs. Since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples, who heard that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him with the request, "Please come to us without delay." So Peter got up and went with them. And when he arrived, they took him to the room upstairs. All the widows stood beside him weeping and showing tunics and other clothing that Dorcas had made while she was with them. Peter put all of them outside, and then he knelt down and prayed. He turned to the body and said, "Tabitha, get up." Then she opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He gave her his hand and helped her up. Then calling the saints and the widows, he showed her to be alive. This became known throughout Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. Meanwhile, he stayed in Joppa for some time with a certain Simon, a tanner. So this is all we know of Dorcas, or Tabitha. So Tabitha would be her Hebrew name, but she lived in a time where Greco-Roman culture was prevalent everywhere. And so she would also have a common Greek name, which was Dorcas. Both of them, both Tabitha and Dorcas, mean gazelle. So a gazelle is a strong, graceful, very fast animal. Kind of like a more graceful, more awesome deer, I guess is how you would say it. And gazelles are also mentioned elsewhere in the Bible. So gazelles are mentioned in one of my favorite books, which is Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon, as it's sometimes known, to describe a beautiful woman. They talk about gazelles. So here, what we know about Dorcas, or Tabitha, I like Dorcas just because I like the name. What we know about Dorcas is that she has died. She's a disciple of Jesus, it says. It calls her a disciple. This is a female disciple. We are hearing about how at the beginning of the church, at the very beginning of the church community, there were women who were known as disciples, who were followers and teachers of the good news. And Dorcas was one of them. Now, it is believed that Dorcas was a clothes maker. We get some of that from this text here, right? The widows were standing there with their tunics and other garments she had made them. So it is believed that she was middle age, at least, maybe a little older, that she herself was probably widowed, but that she made clothes for the rich and the powerful. But along with making clothes for the rich and the powerful who paid her to do so, she made clothes for those who couldn't afford it. She made clothes for other widows. She made clothes for children. And all of these widows, all of these people who she blessed, came at her death and were weeping. And they were showing Simon Peter, look, Peter, look what she has done for me. Look how she loved me. Look how she cared for me. She used her talents, the ones that she already had, and blessed other people with them. She found a way to use what God had gifted her with to gift God's children, to give back. So while she did it for a job, she also did it as a way to show love and care to other people. So I like to imagine that this brought her joy. No, I don't know that. But here are all these women crying around her who have beautiful garments that she has made for them that they could not pay for. And so I imagine that being able to care for somebody, being able to use her gifts and her talents to care for others brought her great joy. I've been thinking a lot about that, about what gifts or talents do I already have that I could use to do good things for others with? What am I capable of that I could do that could bring joy to somebody else? What has God blessed me with? What am I good at? What do I have interest in that I could use to help others? So one of the things I love to do is I love to cook. I love being in my kitchen. I love baking. I love cooking. And that's something that I very often use to share joy with others. I take cookies or casseroles or whatever it might be. It's something that I already love. And it's a way for me to share something with others, to care for others when they're sick or when they need cheered up or maybe when they can't afford their own food as well. I know you all have tons of talents. I know there are lots of things that you're good at, lots of interests that you have that you could use to help others. Maybe you love math. Maybe you could help a fellow classmate who's struggling. Maybe you are a dedicated runner. Maybe you could help motivate somebody who wants to run every day. Maybe you love little kids. Maybe you could give the parents down the block a little break from their kiddos so that they could catch their breath and you could hang out with their kids for a while. What interests do you have already that you could use for good? What gifts and talents do you have that you could use for good? That you could use to care for and bring joy to God's children, to the world? So I have an idea to share with you. These don't really require that much skill, which is part of the reason I chose them, because I am not a clothes maker like Dorcas was. But I imagine that I know that having somebody make you something brings tons of joy. So I have a skirt that my mother made for me, I don't know, when I got confirmed, I think, so 7th grade. And I still have that skirt. She handmade it for me, and it is my favorite skirt. It brought me so much joy. But like I said, I'm not a clothes maker. So I thought instead we would make tote bags today. So if you can always pause the video here so you can go grab your supplies, or you can come back to it later. So I have 2 options for tote bags today. One is cut and 1 knot, super easy. The other is cut and a bunch of knots. But either way, they're really pretty easy. So for the first one, you just need a pillowcase, just a standard pillowcase. So I actually took this, I think this one is Killian's. Nope, this one is Coral's. So I took this from Coral, but it's just a standard pillowcase, okay? And you're gonna make 2 cuts in it, 2 U-shaped cuts. But I like symmetry, so instead of making 2 U-shaped cuts, I decided to fold my pillowcase in half the hot dog way, as we used to call it in school. I'm not sure if you still call it that in school, but so folded it in half the hot dog way, okay? And I'm going to show you here on this one. So this is a tote bag I have made. Here it is. This is the tote bag part, and this is the handle. And it can go up on your shoulder as a little tote bag or just down on your arm. But so I folded my pillowcase in half for this one, which is what I did for the other one. Of course, I did it the hot dog way, okay? And then I just cut kind of a U shape out of it. So imagine this is our pillowcase. I don't know how well you can see this down on the table. Brian, how well can they see down on the table? Can they see what I'm doing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's a U shape, so I cut it out. Now, the thing I'll say is I would have liked this strap to be a little longer, so I think I'm going to cut my U a little longer. So I recommend getting a pair of good sewing scissors to do this. So you have your hot dog folded pillowcase, and you want the opening to be at the top by you. That's where you're going to cut, okay? And you're gonna leave a little bit of strap. So I don't know how big you want your strap. I would say I left about 2 inches here in the middle, so I ended up with about a 4-inch strap. So I'm gonna leave about 2 inches, and then I'm just gonna cut. So you can see here, this is gonna be my strap part here, okay? And it's actually double that width because it's folded over. And this is gonna be the part that I'm actually gonna get rid of. So I'm gonna cut down, and you can cut as far down as you want, just depends on how long you want your strap to be. So like I said before, I thought this strap was a little short, so I'm gonna see how far I went on this one. And I'm gonna go a little further than that. Now, you can draw like a template on a piece of paper or something so you can do this, or you can just kind of freehand it. I'm just freehanding it. I don't expect this to be I mean, it's a pillowcase tote bag, so it's nothing super fancy, but so I cut my 2 U's out. So when you fold it, ooh, and that one I might have made a little too long. So when you fold it open, this is what you have, okay? Now this is your top here, and it's not sewn. So all you're gonna do is tie a knot, really simple. You're just gonna tie a knot. You're gonna make sure you tie that knot super, super tight because you don't want it coming out. And you could tie it with just like a tiny bit of string hanging over of the tail there, or if you want, you know, a little bit more, whatever kind of fashion statement you want to make, you can tie them a little longer. But remember, you want to tie them super, super tight. So we'll see if I can get it super tight. Okay, so that's your bag. Okay, and once again, it can go on your shoulder. So this is tote option number 1. So if you're watching, this was just out of a pillowcase, okay? And I took the opening part, cut 2 U shapes, tied it in a knot. You have some leftover pieces here. I don't know if you have a crafty person in your family, or you are a crafty person, maybe there's something you want to do with those. Mine will probably just go in the garbage. I'm really sorry, crafty people. Shout out to me if you want them. So I have 2 pillowcase totes here. Super easy, super simple, just with pillowcases we had laying around the house. So maybe it's a pillowcase that's to an old sheet set, or maybe it's one that you just don't use, or maybe you just want a new pillowcase, so you're gonna do this with that pillowcase. But if you are a kiddo, check with your parents first. Make sure you don't cut up a pillowcase that they're gonna be mad about. Okay, so that's our first tote bag option. So our second tote bag option is with a t-shirt. Okay, so I'm taking a t-shirt that is actually too big for me. I love this shirt, but I don't wear it very often because it's kind of big on me. So instead, I thought I'd turn it into a tote bag so that I can still use it and carry it. So if you have a shirt that maybe you've outgrown, that maybe is too small for you, but you still really love, you can maybe turn it into this tote bag. So all you're gonna do is take a t-shirt, okay? And again, you want a good pair of sewing scissors if you have them. And this is a tote bag that I made out of a t-shirt already. So There's my little handles there. Okay. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna lay your t-shirt out, and you're gonna try and line it up so it's as seams, so the seams are all lined up and it's as flat as possible. Okay. And then you're gonna cut the sleeves off. Okay, so these are actually the sleeves from my last shirt. So you're gonna cut each sleeve off. I cut both sleeves off. And then you're also gonna widen the neck a little bit. So this is the neck from the last t-shirt I used as well. And again, I'm just freehanding it. So it's not perfectly symmetrical, but if you want it to be a little closer, what I recommend is just like we do with the pillowcase. So fold it over, and again, make sure you're lining up to the best of your ability, and trying to push some of those wrinkles out, because that's gonna make it more even if you're wanting it to be really even. So, and on the last one I did was Brian's shirt. So the armholes were a little bigger. So you'll see that they hang down pretty far on this. Now, if you don't want them to hang down quite that far, just stay really close to your seams. I got a little bit wide of my seam, maybe 2 inches at some point. So if you want to just stay a little closer to your seam, which I think is what I am going to do here with this shirt, is I'm going to stay a little closer to my seams. Now, it might be a little bit hard to get through that first little chunk there because there's so many extra things there, extra layers there. And the same with the very end there, just a few extra layers. Okay, and actually, I'm off just a little bit here, so I'm gonna fix this here. I didn't quite go all the way past the seam when I curved. I didn't curve with the seam very well, so I'm just gonna fix that a little bit. Okay, so cut my sleeves off, right? Now, I'm actually gonna reverse fold this to do the neck. Here's why. There's words on mine that I want to make sure I don't cut off. So if you are wanting to keep the image or the words, I recommend folding it so you can see those, so that when you cut, you're not cutting them. And again, depending on how big you want your straps to be, depends on how tight to your neckline you want to stay. So I'm going to stay pretty tight to my neckline, mainly because my words are really high on my shirt, and I want to make sure that I leave those words. And I'm just gonna curve with my neckline. Okay, so ended up cutting off the top of my shirt, little neckline, kind of like a little dickie. Is that what those are called? Yeah. But so then, all right, so I'm gonna show you. That's all it is, okay? So those are gonna be my arms on my tote bag. So again, if you want your arms to be a little bit bigger, mine actually go up on my arms still pretty nicely, but if you want them to be a little bit bigger, just cut a little further from your seams. Okay, so once you have your top, this was actually, I don't know, maybe I want to leave this one in a tank top. Once you've cut up from your top, you're going to turn your shirt around and you're going to have it at the bottom. Okay, so there's 2 ways of doing this. Now, I'll show you the 2 ways. Okay, so this is if you put your knots on the inside of your tote bag, okay? But you also have the option of putting your knots on the outside of your tote bag, okay? So this is if you want your knots on the outside of your tote bag. That's what it would look like down there, okay? So if you want your knots on the outside of your tote bag, like this, just leave your shirt just the way you have it, okay? Don't pay attention to this next step. If you want your knots on the inside of your tote bag, like this, then I want you to pay attention to the next step. So if you want your knots on the inside, you're gonna start by turning your shirt inside out, okay? So if you want them on the outside, remember, this is the step you're skipping. But if you want them on the inside, just go ahead and flip your shirt inside out and get it laid out again, nice and flat, as smooth as you can. Seam on the very edge there, okay? Okay, so whether your knots are on the inside or the outside, join us now, okay? So we're gonna just cut strips up from the bottom of the shirt opening. So from the bottom of your shirt where your belly would be, okay? you're gonna just cut strips up. If you've ever made a tie blanket, essentially that's what we're doing right now, okay? We're just gonna cut them up. And, you know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches, cut up high, and then I do like 1 inch per strip, probably. And again, I'm just eyeballing this. If you are wanting to, I mean, you could get out a ruler, you could really measure, but I think it'll look great no matter what you do. So then you're gonna cut just all the way across, okay? So if I were really fancy with technology, which I'm not, that's, I would do this as one of those time-lapse things right now, so you wouldn't have to actually watch me cut all of these strips and see how long that actually takes me. But I don't have that kind of ability. So if you want to fast forward and pretend it's your own time-lapse, go for it. Otherwise, I just have a little bit further to go. I'm cutting all the way across, just cutting these strips. Okay. And again, as you know, I'm just eyeballing it, seeing how it goes. I got good scissors though. Good scissors make all the difference. If your mom is a sewer, or your dad is a sewer, or your grandma is a sewer, and they have some good sewing scissors, you can ask to use them. Make sure you ask, because people who sew are very, very protective of their scissors. And make sure you only ever cut material with them. Do not ever cut paper or anything else with them, because that is a good way to be banned from ever getting to use their scissors again, okay? Okay, so now all you're gonna do is tie double knots. But you're gonna start, you have one that has the seam on it here on the outside, so it's like a U shape. I'm gonna tuck it in my first knot, okay? So it's gonna be inside my first knot. I'm not sure you saw what I did there. So I'm gonna show you on the other end as well. So you don't want a hole in between. So I'm gonna lift up the top flap, and I'm gonna pull that last edge flap that's one on by itself into the in between those flaps. I'm gonna shut the top flap back down, and then I'm gonna tie that knot. And the reason I'm doing that is because then there's not a hole right there in the tote bag, right? Okay, so then all I'm gonna do is match these are matched up. I'm gonna just tie knots all the way across. I'm gonna double knot them. I'm gonna pull tight because we don't want them coming undone, okay? So once again, you know, if I had that amazing time-lapse feature, I could do that right now. But since I can't, I am gonna have you watch me tie all of these, or you can fast forward and do your own little time-lapse. So this is our 5th Woman Wednesday. This is our 5th woman we've talked about. So we talked about Hannah the first week, I believe, which is Samuel's mother. And Hannah struggled to become pregnant. And when she became pregnant, she promised God that if she had a son, she would give him to God. And so that is what she did. She took him to the temple when he was old enough and left him there, and he became a man of God. So that was Hannah the first week. And then we talked about, was it Mary and Martha the next week? Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, so then we talked about Mary and Martha on week 2. And we talked about how one sister sat at Jesus's feet and listened to Jesus, and the other sister cleaned and cooked and got everything ready for Jesus, and how both of those are actually very important. And oftentimes the sister who cooked and cleaned and did all of those things is belittled because she didn't just sit and listen to Jesus. But doing is not a bad thing. That was how she showed her love and care, was in acts of service to others. And her sister showed through quality time. And so the different ways we show love are not better or worse than other ways other people show love. They're just different. And we made bread that week. So if you missed that, go back, check out that bread recipe and try it at home. It's super easy. You don't need any yeast. Nothing needs to rise. You do have to knead, so you get a little bit of that upper arm workout. So we talked about Mary and Martha. So Hannah, Mary and Martha. What else did we talk about? I know last week we talked about Mary Magdalene, who followed Jesus. Jesus healed her of 7 demons that were inside of her, and she became a follower of Jesus. She was there at his death. She was the first in some gospels to see him alive, but she was definitely one of the first at the tomb in every gospel. Who am I missing? Who did we talk about the week in between there? Oh, we talked about Deborah. I am so sorry, I forgot Deborah, who was a judge, and she was a warrior, and she was a poet, and there was a gentleman who was supposed to lead their army in defeating their enemy, and he was too afraid, and she told him, fine, I'll do it, but you won't get the glory. And she led them into battle, and they ended up winning. However, the glory was not hers either. And we talked about how she was a poet, as well as a judge. And I invited you to write some poetry. So if you wrote some poetry, I'd love for you to share that with me. If you missed that one, go back, watch it, and write us some poetry. We'd love to hear it. And then this week we talked about Dorcas, who was raised from the dead by Peter. And next week we're going to talk about Rahab. And Rahab is in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, her story is. And her story is a little bit more complex, more like Deborah's. In Deborah's story, there was war, and she was a warrior, and very violent, lots of murder. So a little bit more of a complex story to figure out how we relate to that and what is going on in our faith and what we can learn from these fierce women of God. So join us for Rahab next week. But I did finish my tote tying here. So if you want to leave yours on the outside, you just leave it the way it is, right? If you want to put yours on the inside, if you flipped your shirt originally, go ahead and flip it back, and you'll have your knots on the inside, and there is your tote bag. So two super easy ways to make a tote bag, whether you do it with a t-shirt or with a pillowcase. Just some great easy ways to do that. So again, here's our t-shirt tote bags. Very easy, simple ways to do a tote bag. Or we have our pillowcase tote bags as well, which are even quicker, take even less time with our tote bags there, our pillowcase totes. So my suggestion for you is that you fill one of these tote bags and give it to someone. So I don't know what you want to fill it with. I don't know if you want to do a little COVID-19 survival kit. Throw a roll of toilet paper in there, maybe some chocolate, maybe some pop or popcorn, maybe something like that. Maybe one of your favorite movies, an old DVD you have or something. Oh, or a craft item to do, and go deliver it to somebody. Share a little COVID-19 kit with somebody. Give them some joy. Maybe you're a baker. Maybe you want to bake. Maybe you want to share a book with them. So take one of your favorite books. Give them a favorite book and maybe a tea bag or some bubble bath or a bath bomb or something. But share this with them. And maybe even stick a note in there about Dorcas. Tell them about Dorcas and how Dorcas was able to bring joy with things she was already interested in, and how you're trying to just bring a little joy right now with things you're interested in and sharing those with others. Give it to your neighbor, give it to somebody who delivers, fill it with snacks for the UPS driver. I'm sorry.
The garbage.
Oh, or the people, the garbage men or garbage people who pick up our garbage, the postal worker in your neighborhood, any of those essential workers. Maybe you want to fill it with snacks and take it to your local clinic for those who are working at the doctor's office or the hospital. But just use your tote bag to share joy. And if you're like me and you're like, but I wanted to keep this tote bag for myself, keep that one for yourself. Make another one. It's okay. You can have some joy in your life too. So this is my tote bag. I'm not giving it away, but I will make a tote bag and share it with somebody else. So how many times can I say so and in one Woman Wednesday? Count them up. Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for joining me this Woman Wednesday as we learned about Dorcas, or Tabitha, one of my favorite women in the Bible. And join us next week on Wednesday as we learn about Rahab. Have a great week 5 of quarantine, and make sure you join us on Sunday for worship, 9 a.m. live on YouTube and Facebook. See you later.